Welcome to How to Be the Difference with your hosts, Joanna and Paul. A podcast for the career you want, or maybe just that push you need. If you want to know what your dream career looks like, join us to get inspiration from industry experts that will make that dream career a reality. Hello and welcome to How to Be the Difference with your host, Joanna Molina.
And myself, Paul Linsky.
How are you, Paul? What have you been up to?
Very good. Well, I say very good, but I'm struggling to move about too much. I went on a big hike on the weekend because the county is opened up. We're kind of coming out of lockdown here in Ireland, and I walked to the top of the closest mountain with some friends, and I didn't realize how unfit I am. So how are you, Joanna?
I can probably relate to you in the last year. Very good, very good. I took my dog to see the dog whisperer in Colombia.
Like the guy off the does that guy exist? The fellow who whispers to dogs?
The guy is called Cesar Millan, but I didn't take the dog to this man. I don't know him. To our local version of this man. And it's incredible. I mean, I just realized that I've been a dog owner all my life and I've done everything wrong. Everything.
That's amazing. I need to know more about this dog whisperer, but we've got a very, very big episode this week. You enjoyed it a lot and we were very excited.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Our guest, she's an incredible woman. I've been following her and her career for a while now. And she recently launched the book, The Values Compass, which is super interesting. It's been reviewed by the Dalai Lama. And it's basically a set of short stories for almost over 120 countries, I believe, where she tells stories about each country and then defines each country with a main value, like an overarching value, which was the one for Ireland, I think.
Yes, because we were joking about this before the interview, and you were saying Ireland's not on it. It's not on the list, but it actually was on
No
the
values.
List. No values. It was the gift of the gab. So it was kind of like communication and talking and that ability to just kind of talk to anybody and, make stuff up in your head as you go along, and storytelling and all of that stuff that goes along with it. She actually had a great story. I don't know if you believe this, Jonah, but there's a castle in Ireland and it's in Cork and it's called Blarney Castle. And each year, millions of tourists go to this castle. They climb to the very top of it and then they lean off the edge and they kiss a rock. It sounds disgusting. It kind of is, but it apparently gives you the gift of the gab, so the ability to speak. There you go.
Oh, that's nice. I love those stories. Yes, you will be surprised with how many things I do believe. The one that she described Colombia with is diversity. And yes, I think she's so right. We are such a diverse country from its people, music, cultures, everything really. It's like having little countries within one. But anyway, take it away. Please introduce us to our guest today.
Thanks, Joanna. And before we jump into our conversation with Mandeep, if you're liking this podcast, please like and rate and do all those good things wherever you get your podcasts. And then we'll jump into the conversation with Mandeep. Dr. Mandeep Rai is a global authority on values, working with companies, institutions, and individuals around the world. She has travelled to more than 150 countries and has reported as a journalist for the BBC World Service and Reuters, amongst others. She began a career in private banking with JP Morgan and later worked for the United Nations, the European Commission and grassroots NGOs before setting up the UAE's first media venture capital fund. Mandeep studied philosophy, politics and economics, has a master's in international development from the London School of Economics, and completed an MBA at London Business School with a year at Harvard Business School and MIT. She holds a PhD in global values. Mandeep is the author of The Values Compass, what 101 countries teaches about purpose, life and leadership, the 2021 Tinker to Watch on the Thinkers 50, and the 2021 Business Book of the Year in Diversity, Equality and Inclusion.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Whereabouts in the world are you?
So I'm in London, having just come back from this mammoth trip across Africa, which took me to Central African Republic with UN Women, then Cameroon with Echo Bank and a few financial institutions, then Gabon with the First Lady, Prime Minister, etc. Then Burkina Faso for the university in Ouagadougou, which is one of my favorite words ever. And then Mali, which was, wow, Mali was just, I was going to say like a huge, I was going to say tsunami, but that would be the wrong word, like a wave, but not a overwhelming wave of like art and culture and music and people with real vision of where the country could go next.
That is a lot. That's absolutely amazing. And we're going to get into all of that. But I just wanted to kick this off with there's a quote on your book, and it's the values compass. And it says the values compass takes us into the hearts, minds, and traditions of the cultures and people from around the world. It demonstrates how interconnected we are and how the divisions that exist between us stem from acting with narrow self-interest rather than concern for the good of human family. I hope the book will contribute to making the world a happier place. And that was wrote by the Dalai Lama. How did that happen?
Well, I've met many incredible people just recently and throughout my life. But I have to say, His Holiness is probably one of the most, I would say that almost beyond human. It felt a little. It felt as though they were beaming light. And I met them first I was first in their presence at the age of 21 when I visited Dharamshala in India. And now, literally 20 years later, we've had a very long-standing relationship where I've met them several times in London, or I'm told when they're in London sometimes, I'm told when they're in New York. If I'm in New York, I'm told when they're kind of roaming, I get to be informed, thankfully. We built up this really beautiful relationship with them and the Rinpoches around them. I say them because to say he is almost, I don't know, again, that whole idea of someone truly so spiritual that they're kind of beyond he, she, or the norms. And so when the book finally came out, it was quite, I wouldn't say easy, but they were almost like, oh, finally your book is out. Of course I'd write something about it, because they'd heard about it for so long.
That is truly amazing. And I'd like to bookmark that for later on, something that you mentioned about building relationships with someone like His Holiness the Dalai Lama. But I want us to go back into the beginning of your career. Will you be able to tell us a little bit about yourself, your background? How do you end up where you are today, known as a global authority on values?
Wow. So firstly, I would say that none of this has been planned. So for anyone who's listening, who's thinking, what do I do with my life? Not to worry. Just take the best step you can each and every time. And my aim was simply to follow my values without really realizing it. I realized that I needed to follow my values as soon as I realized that I wasn't following my values. And then I had to course correct. And I think I've just course corrected every time there's been a shift in me. And then I've shifted the environment around me to match those values. So for example, my values at times have been very much freedom and exploration, as you've just witnessed over the last month, and as you'll witness in the next month. But that doesn't mean that there aren't times of real stability and concentration and hunkering down. And so there are times when you need to finish something or produce something, or you have a real creative urge, and you should honor that. And there are times when you really need to, be adventurous, set free, and create the ideas at that time, and then honor that. Now, I'm not saying that we all necessarily have the freedom to do what we want to do whenever we want to do it, but we can try and choose the right environment for ourselves. So, for example, when I was younger, the right environment for me was definitely um, uh, roaming correspondent, journalism. I wanted to see how the world worked, to seek the truth as much as I could, and to really just to see everything and experience everything, which I think most of the Gen Z and millennials would relate to. And then there came a stage, like I remember, falling pregnant, for example. And then my focus really shifted to how do I teach or give the next generation everything possible? How do I give them all the wisdom of the world? There are times when, for example, when I did my MBA, when I knew, because I was setting up this venture capital fund, that I wanted to upskill myself, that I wanted to give myself greater, a kind of a better grounding and understanding and vernacular, semantics, words, jargon that would be suitable for that time. So each and every step, I just reassessed and thought about what was required or what's the best thing I could do at this point. And that's how I'm here. And where is here? We're always on a journey. We're never at the final destination. Even on your last day, I don't think you're at the final destination, or who knows what that destination is. And to be open to growing, at least that's again one of my core values. I hope that I am constantly learning and growing and appreciating, kind of cherishing what I'm experiencing.
Amazing. We would love to have you educate us on values. So, our values, we're born with values, we change, you are mentioning, we change with values. What are values like? Do you change them throughout your life? What is the difference between those values and principles and skills? How do you improve them?
Great question. So values are really a combination of nature and nurture, but they can also be a combination of choice and reaction. So initially we are reacting to our circumstances, we're reacting to what's happening to us, it's a reaction to, and at some point, definitely in adult life, like after, I would say there are a few critical points as you're growing up. Normally, before the age of 10, something quite substantial has happened that already frames your viewpoint on life to some degree. Then definitely by around the age of 13, you'll have a moment where you feel not sure I belong, or I'm not sure what do I need to do to fit in, or this sense of a human sense of wanting to belong kicks in. Many of us have moments where we think, I'm not sure I'm good enough even. What do I need to do? Or what do I need to do to survive? What are and each and every time those critical moments happen, and they're different for all of us, but they happen pretty much to all of us, up to the age of 18, you'll find that you're shaping yourself. You make decisions. Some people, for example, like I'll give an example. If you it's not traumatic, but it could be traumatic to you. If you found that there was a moment at school where you were told, very publicly to be quiet, or you found that you were applauded when you spoke up, you might decide at that point, I better stay quiet. I better keep my voice low, or I better make sure that I raise my voice because that works. Like you make little decisions. This works, this doesn't. This works, this doesn't. Now, over time, they can become your hacks, your tricks, or your values. A value is what you really hold close to you, what really motivates you, what really matters to you, what you really value. essentially, like in the most basic of terms. Now, when you turn 18, or at whatever stage you decide that you are now going to make a conscious decision, that there's a choice, that every single time something happens, I deliberately take a breath at that point, because every single time something happens, you can take a breath and you can make a choice. And at that point, or before that point even, the values compass encourages you to take a process to really identify what really matters to you, your core values. So as you take that breath, what can help is, and this is actually what the values compass really helps with, is for you to identify what truly matters to you, your core values. And once you've done that, it's almost as though you are equipping yourself with your own personal compass, with your own, north, south, east, west. You can navigate yourself because you've chosen, one, what matters, and two, you've prioritized what matters. And that makes a huge difference, because if you put everything at equal pegging, you've decided, 5 things matter, but they're all equally important. Well, then again, your compass is not going to work so much, because which one of those 5 do you choose at any given point? But when you take a breath and you actually have already, before you've taken that breath, in the moment that you went through the process, have decided what number 1 is in this period of time, what's number 2, 3, 4, 5, and what would serve you best according to what you think is important, then it does create, as His Holiness said, a greater kind of sense of harmony in your decision making, a greater sense of, or even in your life, because you're going by kind of your inner guide. You're being led and focused by your inner guide. And also you've decided it's an active choice rather than just reacting to what happens from your automatic, or always, you're always from your automatic reactions, from the way you normally are triggered and the way you normally react. So you're stepping away from that.
So would your suggestion to everybody is to get like 5 kind of core kind of guiding values, and then just kind of pick from them, and when the scenario gets thrown up?
So the it's not as difficult as it sounds, and the book kind of takes you through how you find those 5. And then because you've prioritized them, you don't even have to pick from them. So let's say, for example, you have decided, let's say in my case, I had decided that adventure and exploration and learning were really important, but that I'm meeting that need already. When a decision comes up as to whether I want to pause and help someone, contribute, serve, give back, well, that's a really important value to me, number 2. And if I've already met the need, or I'm already meeting the need, or I'm already, being fed in terms of growth and exploration and learning, then I know that service will really help nourish, and that this will be the best thing I could do at this point. So you don't have to you don't have to sit there and choose, oh, which one do I choose? Number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You will already know, well, I'm already meeting the first 3. I can focus on 4, for example.
Amazing. And you mentioned something that stood out a lot for me, and it was those critical moments when you're 13, 18, and those things that happen to you and they kind of shape the person you are. Do you see this current situation we are in now with this pandemic kind of affecting people and shaking their values, I suppose?
Very much so. What I love about Gen Z and their introspective way of being is the fact that they focus on things like mental health. They focus actually much more on their values. They focus on, is this leading to a richer life? Not materially, not monetarily, but is this leading to my my development and my growth? And I see that a lot more than in the previous generations. And so I think that this moment in time has taught people a lot about who they are, what they need, and how they might. This is like a critical moment to look at something like the values compass, because you can shape your new life, which we are all creating right now and all emerging into, according to, upon the foundation of what we have learnt, and upon the foundation of our new insights, and upon the foundation of what we know will be important for our nourishment and growth. And to grow, or to build upon that kind of foundation of knowledge, is better than just to see it as a bad dream and wake up the next day and, hope for the best or fumble through life. It's just nice to be able to build upon what to have learnt the lessons that we've all had to learn over the global pandemic, over the last year.
That is so true. So as we talk about this introspective process of discovering what our values are, and the current situation we are living in, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, we actually are all interconnected and divisions are not necessarily real. What are those values, in your opinion, that are common or that can help us succeed in today's world? Even if it's something very personal, but in your opinion, what are those that, yes, they have to be there? These are core values. And similarly, for people, how they identify, I suppose is a different question as well, values in their companies. If they are looking for a job, how do they identify their values in someone else, either a person or a company?
Okay, two different questions. So your first question, remind me of your first question so I can focus on that.
Yes,
and then I'm going to answer your second. Yes.
So it's about, what are those core values, in your opinion, for us to succeed in today's world? Yeah, understanding that is a very personal process and that we all have various different sets of values, but what are those that in today's world are more needed and that will help people succeed in their professional and personal aspects?
Well, I can't say that there's one or two core values for all of us, but what I can say is that over this recently, we have seen, myself included, because you wanted it to be personal, that we've gravitated towards certain values, like the value of collaboration, connectivity. Like, as soon as that connection to the real world or to one another was reduced, people quickly looked for other ways to connect. And whether that mean through pictures on Snap, or whether it mean through Zoom, or whether it mean through, we've utilized technology in many ways, but we've also found that we've wanted to have, we've focused on relationships, and needing and wanting to relate has really been crucial. Also the sense of not just to relate, not just to connect, but to collaborate, to create together. And then the other one is creation, in fact, to create, to find innovative solutions, always, not to get stuck, like to be in movement and growth and flow. So these type of values I've seen risen. And so what we've wanted in this period, but I think this is true for humanity, is this empathy, compassion, real care, caring for one another, like a leader or a boss or even a member of a household who doesn't have that sense of compassion or care or empathy, I think has really suffered at this time, because when we need that at the best of times, but normally you might be able to get it in all forms of people. We've interact with many, many, many people. But in times like this, when you realize actually the laser beam becomes much more narrow and much more focused, and focused on a few, it becomes even more important that it's present and there. And then to your second question about how do organizations or companies identify their values, it's a very similar process. Like I run workshops and work a lot with companies, because when they become clear about their values, then throughout the whole entire supply chain, organizational chain, human chain, the product, the service, everything from their marketing to their communication to the way they hire to who they hire, all of that becomes informed by what they have decided is important to them, by what they really stand for, by their purpose and their mission. And this is the same for people, and it's the same for organizations, and it's true for organizations. And it's true for schools, it's true for communities, it's true for anywhere where there's people. Essentially, it's just different groups of people. It's true for families, it's true for couples, it's true for friends. It's, it's actually, it's it's almost like a concentric circle. Just as though it's true for an individual, then if you've got 2 or 3 or 4 in whatever shape and mold and mission, it is true, because there is often, we find when we're invigorated by our purpose and our mission in each of these forms and groupings, then it takes a whole nother level of meaning to us.
Yes, and we are actually experiencing that ourselves with the podcast even. I think we recognize in the past we used to speak with people and it was almost like the right answer. It was already preset. No, to be a leader, you need to be really good at being around people, inspiring people. But now we are hearing people actually identifying their values and saying things like, to be a good leader, you need to be compassionate. To be a good leader, you need to embrace your vulnerability. You need to find, as you say, ways to connect, ways to co-create, ways to collaborate deeply. And that's a really beautiful process. Also, just by seeing that we are embracing humanity, not trying to be whatever stereotype that it was in the past is more. And we see that a lot more in Gen Zs.
I'm just going to share one thing. I realized that just as you've been talking about these interviews, I thought, if that's all we're saying, that a good leader needs to be compassionate or collaborative, we're missing an opportunity. Sometimes these points are better made if I tell a story, or indeed a personal story. So when I was younger, I remember seeing this one gentleman. He would let people onto the bus, and he would have a huge smile. And I remember seeing him and thinking, what would happen if I smiled as he did? And if I kind of, what would happen if I just tried to see how many people can I make smile through my smile? And then what would happen if I try and see how many people I could make laugh, or how many people could open up, or how many people could you just break into so that they are able to release and lighten their load? And so that maybe that's what led me to journalism. I don't know, but I know that when I started to think like that, firstly, it wasn't just a competition with myself. It was actually this want and need to connect and to give and to build that kind of sense of love between each and every person I interacted with. And then you realize that you can, when you do this with questions, and even if I just instead of saying to you, how are you today, Joanna? You might have heard that question several times, and you have now created your usual answer. Oh, I'm good. How are you? But if I say something like, oh, what is it like to be Joanna today? Or what happened in Joanna's world? Or why would Joanna be happy? Or what is Joanna grateful for? Or what is kind of bugging her, and what can we shed? What can we shake off? Or something. Just to change that question even will make you take that breath, will make you pause and make you think and actually relate to that person and answer that question. And in answering that question, I remember seeing this so beautifully in Benin and Togo, like in parts of West Africa, where they would not just, it wasn't just a polite, how are you? It was like a really very quickly a deep inquiry as you're walking to the post office and you ask someone for directions, and very quickly you get into this conversation. Or I remember just recently in Mauritania, how how when two people greet themselves, they would like literally talk at each other. Like I would say, if I said to you, "Hi, Paul, meet Joanna. Joanna, meet Paul," you'd say, "Hi, pleased to meet you." These guys were like, "How are you? How's your grandmother? How's the camels? How are the cattle? It was it was really incredible. It blew me away, because it was this kind of like, until you said everything and until you explored everything and until you really cared, then don't tell me you're just, don't introduce this person to me if I'm not going to give that little bit of attention and really care." So it was like, I think I just wanted to share that story, because I realized that if I can make a visual image in your head, it will stick with you, rather than saying a good leader should be compassionate.
I think I will never forget that. And it will change the way we ask questions in the podcast and in the future. You've been to Colombia, and when you ask a Colombian, "How are you?" we tell you our whole story, and we actually mean it. And when I'm in the US, it's like, don't answer the question. Just say, "I'm fine." Like, don't really answer the question. But it feels like it ties nicely with a bookmark I did at the very beginning. Let me phrase this question in the way you just told me. What is it about Mandeep that makes you be close to people like His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, and build the relationships that you have built in your career?
Okay. Firstly, can I just share the first part of, as you were building up to that question? I have never interviewed as many people as I interviewed in Colombia, because whether it be the shoe cleaner or the person playing tejo or the person who's, serving the cerveza, or the person who's creating the artist, who's, creating that painting, whoever it was, that the fact that they were willing to share and willing to tell you their story, it was just so beautiful to interview people. And I remember, in contrast, there's one moment in New York where, I was talking about, how I was talking about just kind of asking the way to the post office in Benin. In New York, I just asked the way to somewhere, and the gentleman in the street did not take a breath, did not slow down, did not pause in any way, looked me straight in the eye as he's walking past me and says, "What do I look like? MF map? Like, do I look like a map?" And just walked straight past me. And I was like, wow, I never will forget how drastically different those two cultures were, to your point about, how we answer questions. Okay, so building relationships. Well, look, I would be wrong to say that I don't want to give you the same kind of answer of, "Oh, it requires being vulnerable or being open about yourself," although that is the case. I do think it requires, like, to share as well as really being able to listen. I think, actually, if I think about people's metaphysical, like their human body and what they need, for our body to function, I genuinely think that we actually need for there to be a flow internally. And for there to be a flow, I think that we do need to express ourselves, for that to land, to be heard, for the other person to listen, and for us to listen and accept and to hear that other person also, and there to be that interchange and exchange. So maybe one of the ways to answer your question really directly is to have an acute listening and inquiry and curiosity. Like, to be able to say, not just, "Wow, Joanna, that must have been difficult to have experienced COVID over the winter period," but what happened? How did your life change? What can I do to help you? Like, all the deep, deep things that, it doesn't take a lot more, but it takes It takes just care to really care. I think we have this misconception in our mind that care takes time and we don't have the time. Therefore, we better just not open that can of care, right? but that's not necessarily the case. In fact, I think if we cared a little more, the diseases, the run or rush to the doctor, the panic, the stress that is building up, that is what's taking our time. That is what's sucking us. The idea of, needing a digital detox. Well, if we just all cared a little bit more, I'm not saying that would answer everything, but it would definitely help. But where in our kind of rush to save time or be efficient or worrying that we don't have enough time, this is another key point. I remember I don't often wear a watch, but on one occasion I was wearing a watch and someone laughed and they said, this is in a different part of the world. And they said to me, it was eastern part of the world. And they said, oh, isn't it funny how you're wearing the watch and yet I've got the time? And what he meant by that was the fact that I have the time to sit and care and listen. And I think it's just about creating a little bit of time that saves so much time and angst and everything in the future or right then and there.
That is a beautiful way to put things. And I just wanted to touch on something. You've mentioned a few countries now. You've been to 150 in total. And I was going to ask you to rank them all in terms of favorite, but I won't do that. But how important is cultural immersion? And I suppose the world is getting smaller. We're on Zoom, we're on calls. Everybody's from a different place in the world. How important is it to take that into perspective?
To take culture into perspective?
Just take other people's kind of, work style, like styles, everything.
Yeah, I think... honestly, I think hugely important, not just to respect the other, but also to respect ourselves. So, for example, you can travel the world and visit the same chain of hotel in every world, and it almost feel like you haven't been anywhere at all, right? Because you would have exactly the same experience and the same kind of breakfast and the same kind of pool and the same kind of air conditioning, etc., etc. And if you immerse yourself, I cannot tell you what joy it brings to see another culture unfolding before you. Because each and every culture has created, nobody wants to suffer. Everyone's creating ways of basically being their best selves. So seeing how a culture has done that, I think gives a world of wisdom, because you can see that they've nuanced different practices, like, have different practices and tweaked them through little, and tweak them until they work or until they serve or until, this is why I guess I've chosen one value per place, because it's not to say that we do everything right, but each and every one of us is trying to do something right. And to really open yourself to what that is and allow it to touch you and allow it to inspire you and allow it to nourish you and make you grow and see the world in a different way, so that you don't come back the same person, so that you come back, a version that's not just 1%, but several degrees improved. It's almost like not seeing the world in 180 degrees. I mean, normally I think we're actually a lot more narrow in our view, but to open yourself up to 360 degrees so that you see all the different dimensions and all the different worlds, I would say.
That's truly amazing. And I suppose we were chatting before starting today about women, and a lot of our audience are women. You are certainly an inspiration to a lot of us. What would be your advice? What would be that one thing you can share with young ladies, with women out there that are inspired by your journey?
So I realized that when we were talking about this earlier, that I try to shy away from this. I try to say to you, oh, people aren't going to really need to, what's inspiring? Is it inspiring to hear about someone else, or is it inspiring to do a deep inquiry into your values? And I realized that as you asked the question just then, I also felt that same sense of humility, wanting to shrug it off, wanting to not hide, but just to be modest about it. And I almost feel as though, is this a female trait? I don't know. But I do think that women, girls are so bright and haven't really felt or sensed how brilliant and bright and incredible they are. There have been so many layers of, whether it be misogyny or a patriarchal society, or just the way things are and the way things have always been, that there have been so many obstacles, and whether it be the glass ceiling, every nation, every society, every person has experienced this in a slightly different way. Or we've seen it in the Me Too movement, for example, and how that spread, and how many different people had different stories. Or even just now, when I touch wood, everything went well. But when I stepped out of the home during this period and went to West Africa, or went to Africa, people said, I applaud you as a mother, don't do it. As a wife, don't do it. And I remember thinking, I wonder if a man would have said the same thing. It's almost as if, we have these different sense of responsibilities or duties. And I'm not saying anything is right or wrong. All I'm saying is that I don't think we've even touched a tiny percentage of who we are or what we're capable of. So not to hide your brilliance, not to shy away from it, not to be scared by it, not to apologize for it, not to misinterpret humility for kind of backing off to the point that you don't even speak, for example, or you don't share, or you aren't a part of that conversation, or you don't put yourself forward in a way that that you are really, really known, can be seen, and therefore can reciprocate and listen and hear and do all those other things too.
That was absolutely amazing. And there's so much questions that we really wanted to get to. Like, we didn't even get to talk about your career in BBC, which sounds absolutely amazing. That was how you started out as a journalist, traveling the world, and the crazy things that you've probably seen. Maybe it's another time for a different episode. And also, I have to get the country's rankings off you as well, which we'll do off air. Maybe just top 50 or something.
Well, we can definitely do, happy to do another episode.
It's been amazing, and I can't wait to have you again here chatting with us. Thank you so much, Mandeep, for your time and sharing.
Joanna, I'm really glad that you said it's in everyone, because I think I didn't. I'm not sure if I said that because we were focused on women, but indeed that is in everyone. That that light, that greatness. And I think that the values compass is just about deciding where are you going to shine that light, and to shine that light on it, rather than to never have thought about it, because you've got it. You've got all these gems and jewels within you, and it's just about putting the spotlight there. But thank you so much for having me. I too look forward to the next one. And yes, this has been a delight.
It's a new pleasure. Thanks a million, Dr. Mandeep Rai. And that was the brilliant Dr. Mandeep Rai. I really, really enjoyed that conversation with Mandeep. Just something about her personality, and I suppose as well, Joanna, we spoke a good bit before and after the whole conversation, and what a lovely woman.
Amazing. Yes. I mean, what an authentic woman. I think I admire that especially more after this conversation, her authenticity, how she's been able to build beautiful, strong relationships with really interesting people, and from a point of empathy, compassion. I think there's a lot of value on our previous discussion.
Yes, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. And if you want to tell us that you enjoyed it, or you want to reach us for whatever reason, you can check out How to Be the Difference at the Intern Group, or on social media at the Intern Group. And until next time.
Yes, absolutely. Please, once again, rate us and review, follow us. It really helps. And until next time, see you.
See you. Thanks.
Bye.